Kia ora koutou, very good evening to you. My name is Nicola Batossi. I'm General Manager at Multiple Sclerosis Auckland, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's webinar, Whānau and MS. The format of tonight's session will be stories shared by our wonderful guests, and then we'll invite questions via the text box as we go along. So the webinar itself will be ably managed by my colleague, Martina Torres. She's one of our community advisors here at MS Auckland. So I will hand over to Martina to introduce our speakers and start tonight's session. Thanks.
Kia ora and good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Our first speaker is Andy. Andy grew up with a parent who had MS. Therefore, Andy has a deep understanding of MS and its impact on families. Andy also volunteers as a counsellor with MS Auckland, and she provides an incredible support to our members. So let's welcome Andy as she shares her insights and experiences with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Martina. My experience is very much in the past. My mother in 1960 started having symptoms of MS, but she wasn't diagnosed until mid-70s. So it took 12 years more to get that diagnosis. For myself, her diagnosis was devastating, mainly because, just a quick synopsis of my family, my husband and I were living in a third world country, so we couldn't easily get back to England. We'd had to put our 2 children into boarding school in England. And I was just overwhelmed with a huge amount of guilt. In fact, this can often happen with guilt, because I was so overwhelmed with guilt that I didn't actually realize that I was grieving. I was grieving for my mother. I was grieving for my abandoned children, as I thought it. And I was grieving that I couldn't be all the time with my husband and be a good wife in the third world. So I had a lot going on anyway. My world sort of fell apart. I was trying to keep all the balls in the air. I was trying to be everything to everyone, and just wasn't managing it. So I had feelings, remembering back, I had feelings of anger. I was depressed. I was crying a lot, had anxiety, and a lot of physical symptoms I was experiencing as well, particularly a sore back, recognizing now that, of course, these were all symptoms of grief, particularly grief for a mother I thought I was going to lose. So just looking back, all my relationships were very poor. I had no communication with my mother, very little, other than very expensive phone calls, very little communication with my children, and my marriage was falling apart. So, and this continued pretty much until 1983 when she died. So just looking back and saying to myself, you know, what would I say to my younger self at that time? And the first thing I would say is communicate. You know, I should have talked about my feelings. I should have shared my feelings. I should have reached out to others. I should have thought of myself. I should have taken care of myself. I did none of these things, let alone have compassion for myself. It just wasn't there. I wasn't kind to myself either. I really thought I had to be in 2 places at once. So I was on a plane backwards and forwards from England to Egypt, where we were living, and I didn't set boundaries. nothing like that happened. So talking to myself now, I would say, come on, set boundaries. You know, you have to have time to yourself. I would also give myself a little toolbox, if you like, of things that give me pleasure. I would also learn to breathe, do mindfulness. You really need, I realize you need time to yourself. You need time to care for yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, the whole gamut. So, yeah, particularly I think for me, because I had this negative self-talk, that we need to challenge ourselves on that self-talk. So I was saying, you know, I must look after my mother. I must look after my children. I should do this. I should do that. No, take out the shoulds and oughts, take out the musts. And we wake up in the morning and we have a list of to-do lists, you know, all things we need to do. I'm saying, put a question in there. What are my needs for today? And give yourself some time. Okay, I slept badly last night. I might need to have a little rest. Okay, put that rest into the time slot for the day. So it's really all about caring for yourself. I guess the insight I have now, looking back, and we're going, 40 or 50 years back now, I recognize how important it is to communicate with family. I know if I had spoken to my children then, who were like 12 and 14, if I had told them how I felt, they would have reassured me. No, Mum, we're very happy. We love boarding school. We love coming out to see you. That was the case. I didn't communicate that. Same with other family members. If I had just talked, if I had just listened, it would not have been as it was. And the other thing now is, because I have the privilege of reaching out to MS members in the counselling world, I realize that a lot of questions have come up for me. Questions like, did my mother have invisible symptoms? Was she ever angry? Was she sad? And, you know, I'm ashamed to say that I don't know, because we never talk to each other, really talk. I mean, at a deep level, we never had that communication. So I don't know, even to this day, how she was and how she felt. So yeah, I wish we'd faced the challenges as a family together. And that's the one thing, the bottom line, I guess, we didn't do, was face the challenges together. And I have big regrets about that. But I guess my what I take from it all is the fact that I can now reach out to other people with whatever experience I have, knowledge I have. I feel I have something to give back, and that perhaps is my healing point for the hurt that I had with all those years. So that's really my story in a nutshell. So yeah, thank you for listening. I'll hand you back to Martina.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you for sharing with us. And next we will have a duo joining us, Tracy and her daughter Harry. They both live with MS, and they will tell us more about navigating MS as a family unit. Welcome both.
Good evening. Good evening.
I'll let you go first, Mum.
Hi. I was diagnosed in 2011 with MS. Everybody thought I'd had a stroke, so it was a bit of a shock. In England, my husband had been in the Air Force, and we'd moved out in 2007, and we'd moved around a lot. So as my health-wise, I think that I felt okay. I had a few like mishaps where people have put it down to different sorts of things. But like I say, in 2011 out here, I just woke up one morning feeling pretty rough and ended up in hospital. and saw this really lovely old retired doctor who obviously had seen symptoms that I had before, because I'd actually gone numb all the way down my left side and couldn't move it. So off he sent me. And when he came back and told me I had MS, I sort of stared at him in disbelief, because I hadn't really known anybody that had MS, apart from my best friend in England, whose mum was really poorly with it, who was bedridden, had to be looked after 24 hours a day. And I in my head, I couldn't put the two together. I couldn't see how I possibly could have this disease if, you know, it was so different to somebody else. My husband was really, really supportive, bless him. As a couple, the children were sort of 18 and nearly 21. I think I'm quite a private person, so we sort of kept it to ourselves. The children knew that I was poorly. We didn't really go into a lot of what was wrong with me. We just sort of got on with it. We just sort of kept going, and I then started going to hospital and trying all different treatments. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of luck with the treatments and became quite ill on some of them. And I also, with some of them, I had to come off because they saw the markers for the JC disease in my brain. So at that sort of time, the children, it had probably gone a couple of years onwards, and the children were sort of more older and more established in their relationships and marriage and things like that. And then obviously they began to realise that mum wasn't just, you know, having headaches and feeling tired and things like that. There was something wrong. So we sort of sat down and all had a chat. As well as all that going on, I obviously had aging parents in the UK. So I was trying to go backwards and forwards every couple of years to spend time with my parents, who obviously both were of ill health. They didn't really understand it very much. They just sort of, you know, my mum used to say, "Oh, you're looking really rough, love. You get a cup of tea and a Panadol." Because, you know, as much as I try to explain to them, it's very difficult when you look at somebody and can't actually see a disease that's there. You know, they could see I was tired, they could see I might be limping a bit, but in their head, they couldn't physically see like my arm falling off or my leg falling off. So it was quite hard for them to understand that there was actually something going on. But as my dad passed, and that was really hard and had a real effect on my MS, it made me, you know, very poorly with it. And I think then as a family, you know, we really did pull together and start to realise that, you know, my symptoms weren't just coming and going. They were obviously getting more and more severe. I then we're a very tight-knit family, and my daughter and her children and her husband live underneath me. So they began to hear, if they began to hear thud thud bang on the floor, they realised it was, you know, it was me falling. It wasn't just me bashing away at things. I don't really think I realised what sort of toll my MS had on other people, because I'm such a private person that, like, I don't go out in the streets and when I meet new people, you know, say I've got MS, or, you know what I mean? I keep it quite to myself, which I suppose in a way isn't very good. Recently, I've just sort of joined, you know, the MS groups and started getting out and mixing and socialising with people. I got made redundant from my job that I've been at for 5 years because of the medical side of MS. That was really big for me. And as a family, I think, you know, everybody felt that, because I just felt useless. So I really did, you know, need support within my family. I really did, you know, we all pulled together, and, you know, it was like everybody would like pop in just for a cup of tea, or my daughter would come up from downstairs just on an excuse that probably wasn't even there, but just to check I was all right while my husband was out at work. Mum then got really poorly. Sorry, my mum got poorly, so I went home again to see her, but the traveling that time was just too much, and I came back again, and I was once again really, really poorly. And then what happened was, a few months later, mum passed away really suddenly. So I didn't get to go home. I didn't get to be there with her. So that sort of tipped me over the edge with my MS. And we suddenly realised that rather than just having remitting, I've been to the thing, it's now gone to progressive MS. So that also has changed things in me and as a family, because I know that I've changed. I find it really hard that I can't work anymore. I find it, I don't, like I said, I don't socialise a lot outside the house. I keep myself a bit to myself. I've had people, like when I've parked my car and use a disabled spot, come up and take pictures of my car and, you know, look at me as if I've gone mad because I'm parking in a disabled spot. And probably because I'm a big girl, probably think it's just because I'm fat. So all of those things, you know, are hard to deal with. And I think without a supportive family around you, you know, I think that's the part that keeps me going. And it's really funny. My husband's away at work at the moment for a couple of days, so having my daughter and husband downstairs is fabulous, because even though now Harry has been diagnosed with MS, they still are my support as much as I am with her. Just recently we were out walking stick shopping together because obviously I was having trouble with my hand. So it's a thing now that we joke between each other. It's sort of made it a bit lighter. The hardest things for me was when Harry come back through the door and told me she had MS. That was worse for me than being diagnosed myself. I felt awful. You know, I felt like it was something that I'd passed on to her, and how could I have done that as a mother?
I don't blame her. Just you know, just to be honest.
You know, that was harder for me. My daughter being diagnosed was harder for me than finding out myself that I had it. And I obviously see her now struggling upstairs or going to college tired or things like that. And I can actually see myself when I was trying to pretend that I didn't have anything and everything was okay and was trying to push through every day. I can actually see those beginning signs, and I don't know how I didn't see it in myself when I can so clearly see it in her. Like I say, my husband is away for a couple of days, but last night I sort of said to him, do you know what, love, how did this affect you? I said, write me something so that I can tell people, because my husband is so loving and so supportive. He's done things like take me to the toilet, to get me dressed, to brush my hair, to help me in and out the bath. You name it, he's done it. He's looked after me so well, and I'm so blessed because of that. But you know, when I say to him, how are you doing? He's always like, I'm fine, love, I'm fine, I'm worrying about you. Now, he's also not a well person. So when I asked him last night, I said, just drop me something as to what you think, you know, the MS has been like. And this is what he replied. He sent me an email, and this was the email. When we first found out, I knew it would change our lives, but I don't think I knew how much. You have always been the anchor of our marriage and the strong point, and funny and full of energy and smiles. For the first few years, the attacks were severe, but you bounced back, refusing to accept what it was doing to you. It's only been in the last few years it has taken its toll and slowed you down. It's hard to watch you in pain, knowing there's nothing I can do. Tablets don't help. I can cook a dinner or help you in and out of bath, but I can't take the pain away, and watch how it changed. And I've watched how it's changed you from a smiling, mischievous person you were into a tired and pained person you are today. I'm glad you've given up work, but I know that you struggle with this feeling. You have so much to give, but not the energy to do it, and the frustration this brings. But it's the life we have, so we make the most of the good days and face the bad days together. I know we will face it together, and it might not be the life we imagined, but we will face it together and smile when we can and hold hands when it's not good. Now, I had never realised that my husband had looked and thought of all those things, that I had changed so much, because to me, I'm just mum that plods along with MS, trying to still do what I could do way, way back. So I hope that gives you an idea into my side of the part. And I'll hand you that over to Harry now, who obviously is the younger version of me.
A younger version.
And she's at the beginning stages of MS. So obviously life's very different for her because she's got 2 small children to worry about as well.
I think, as it is about family, this seminar, I will start with when Mum got diagnosed, and they were honest and said that Mum had MS because she'd woken up looking like she just had a stroke one day, and like her whole face had dropped. And the first time it was like, oh, maybe it was just a blip in the brain. We'll wait and see what's going, because Mum was so strong and pushed through it so quickly that even the 3 days she was in hospital, she was making huge recovery leaps. 2-3 weeks later, we were back in the same spot, and the face had dropped, and that's when they started really rummaging. And we got the diagnosis of MS for Mum pretty quickly. She was very lucky with that. And Mum's right. Mum and Dad kept it quiet for a long time. Mum has MS, she's just tired. Mum's in hospital, she's tired. And I remember probably about the age of 18 and a half, 19, staring down my dad. And my dad's a big northerner man. He's a big Yorkshire dude, and being like, I cannot help you. I cannot help Mum if you were lying to me, and you were lying to me now. Tell me the truth, Dad. What's going on? And it was, they think she's had another big MS attack. Don't tell Mum I've told you this, because she doesn't want the weight of it. So we got very close. Me and Mum have always been very close. We've got quite a dark sense of humor. And when we were stopping at car parks and people were saying to her, being fat isn't a disability, I think you've stolen your card, I would be the one to joke and get out the car and drag my leg and be like, come on, Mum, let's go. Didn't know this was going to happen to me in the future, but dealing with it with dark humor was probably the best way me and Mum know how to deal with things and to move forward. So I've always been her advocate. If someone's making fun of her or saying something in the car park, I'm the first one to make a funny face and stare them down. And it did get worse as family got sicker and my grandparents got older. You could see it taking the toll. And I think it was when Granddad got sick. I had been on a weight loss journey and I'd lost 50 kgs. I was healthy. I was running with both my small kids in a pram up and down Skindi each day. And it just went. I woke up one day and I said to my husband as he was getting ready to work, I hurt. And he went, oh, that's nice. And I went, my stomach hurt, my leg hurt, I don't feel right. And he's putting on his work bag, getting ready to go. And he was like, have fun today, look after the kids. And I went to step out of bed and I couldn't. And I screamed and I said, I hurt, I can't move. And that was the start of a very long journey for me. It took many years for me to get diagnosed with MS. I was only diagnosed at the end of last year and I got sick in 2019. And I'm just giving this as a preference or a relevance for what my husband's written, because I had a lot of doctors tell me, you're young, maybe it's just anxiety, maybe it's endometriosis. I did have endometriosis as well. Maybe it's just period pain. And over again, I was told, your mum has MS, you will not have it. There's not much of a likelihood. It's not hereditary, it's not linked. Over and over again, we hit this hurdle of, you don't have it. We had to fight our way through to get my MRI. And when the spots came back on the MRI, my neurologist went, well, maybe you're just clumsy and everyone has a couple of spots. And it was actually my husband, who was my advocate, that said, we can't leave this here because Harry is in too much pain. Harry can't move. How do you explain the fact that over the last few years, we've had 3 months, 6 months, weeks of not being able to, for her not being able to move her arm, her leg, for her to be dropping things on her, to go to pour the kettle and her arm freeze because she can't put the kettle down and burn herself. And that's how I got my lumbar puncture. And when I got diagnosed, my husband and I were probably just thankful for a word, for something to put it to. And I remember the pain team going, you don't want MS. And I said, you know what? If I had MS, I've seen my mum fight it. I've seen my mum survive. So I have a role model for that. And when I got MS, the neurologist went through all the symptoms and everything. And I was just waiting for him to say, but you don't have it because your mum has it. Because that's what I'd heard him say the 3 times I'd met him before. You can't have it because your mum has it. MS looks like this, but you won't have it. But he sat back in his seat and he went, so I think we're looking at MS. And even though Mum had been joking for weeks, we'd be walking on a flat mall and we'd both had footfall. And she'd be like, you know, I really think you've got this disease just like me. And she'd laugh and she'd take 2 steps and then she would stumble. And I would laugh, try catch her, and I would stumble. It was still quite a big shock for the family. Obviously, with my young kids as well, my husband has had to step up a lot in the last few years. The children, if you were to ask them straight, they would say, I don't like that mummy's sick. I don't like your illness. But I think they understand a lot more than what we give them credit for. Mum was the first person to give me my first mobility aid. She was like, where are you going? You can't go like that. Don't leave the house. And she handed me a walking stick. And because of all the times the doctors told me, maybe you're just making up, in my head, I'm like, do I need this? And the other day we went to Costco, and my littlest boy, my 6-year-old, he said to the Costco lady, oh, you have one of those wheelie things. My mommy has a walking stick. And they both put me in it. The lady at the shop was like, nope, you're allowed to use this. And I just felt horrible as everyone stared at me. And it was my little 6-year-old that noticed a lady staring, and he marched straight up to her and he said, my mummy is not old, my mummy is poorly. Because he'd heard her talking and he'd heard her pointing, and she'd obviously said something and he didn't like that, and he was my little advocate. And I got something from my husband. I'm just going to pull it up. So now you know that I've been through quite a bit with doctors. In my husband's word, he's written, it was terrifying when Harry went from being daily active, running her children up the hill to kindy in a double pram, to completely bedridden. The effects were immediate and drastic. We went to many doctors who keep saying, we did or didn't find insert vague illness here. And what was, this very his words, isn't it? And that was the end of it. We had to keep pushing them. So what can we check next? How do we move forward? The journey was long and arduous, and watching Harry constantly carrying that pain that I couldn't fathom, always putting on a brave face regardless. It just makes you question your own strength and relevance when there's nothing you can do while watching someone you love face such a big challenge. I'm so proud of Harry for pushing through on. Although either her sanity, weight, or motives were questioned by health professionals every step of the way, now we have some answers. The new challenge is building confidence in Harry and knowing that she needs support wherever from the family, friends, or mobility devices, and to hold her head above the stares and comments of those who don't understand what it's taken to get there. I am confident Harry can overcome it, as she is the strongest woman that I know. Oh, you stop it! So my husband and my family, as I said, have been the biggest supporters. And it is a family disease. As much as they can't take my pain, as much as they can't do anything, just as I'm here for Mum and she's here for me. We'd always joke that if I was having an MS attack, Mum would be the one that would carry me in the emergency room. And if Mum wasn't going, we'd meet in the hallway and discuss who had the biggest car to be able to carry her in as well. So it's definitely a family disease, and it's something that I'm very thankful that I have a support group around me. And yeah.
And I think that's the main thing. It doesn't just affect the person who has MS. That is, and I don't think when you're the person that has told you have MS, although it changes your life and it's a big, when you finally come to, like I say, it took me years to come to terms with that I actually had MS. I don't think you realise the effect it also has on your family. And I am grateful every day for the people that I have around me, the support that I have, because if you have that sort of support and that sort of love, it helps leaps and bounds. It really does, because there's somebody to bounce off. And the fact that now both Amelia and I have, you know, like I say, I can see in her what was there in me in the beginning, and I can see her fighting it like I did. And all I can do is give her strength to keep going with that. Like I say, my family in England, that to me is the hardest part of MS. That was the hardest part that I've had to face in all the years I've had it now, was the fact that I myself wasn't strong enough to go home to bury my mum. That has been my biggest and most painful experience in MS. The fact that I had my husband, my children, every step of the way behind me saying to me, you know, your mum wouldn't have wanted you to travel the way you are. You know, she wouldn't have wanted you. She'd have worried. She'd have been worrying. She wouldn't have wanted you to, when she was alive, she wouldn't want you to do it now. That is the biggest support. And if you can take solace from everybody around you and use people, like I said, I was very stubborn and thought I didn't have MS, and, you know, I didn't need the world around me. I could just cope with it on my own. But it can also be very lonely if that's what you do. So I say to anybody that use the support that's around you, whether it be your friends, your family, or make new friends. Like we have started to go to the MS coffee mornings now. That has opened up a whole world of things for me, because from the age of 16, I've worked full time. suddenly to have that taken away is a big part of yourself taken away. And as much as your family and that can support you, you do need other people, you do need other help to, you know, so if you are out there and you do have MS, use these support groups. They're there to help you. You will see that other people go through the same struggles. They might even be able to help you with things like, you know, what's a good walking aid, what's a good walking stick, where they've been to that's nice for a coffee, that's easy to go if you've got a wheelchair, all of those things that are vital to keep you going, because between us, we're not going to let MS beat us.
No.
We are going to push out to our limits to do everything we can and keep going as long as we can.
And I think the biggest picture for me, my mom is my biggest role model. And if you want to know how isolating MS is as the person that has it and how much of an impact it has on the family around you, mum didn't cry when she found out she had MS. But when I got back from my neurologist, she was at that door. She was, why are you upset? What's happened? And I said to her, Mum, I have MS. And she just started crying, which made me cry, which made my family cry. And my dad got home from work and he went, what's going on? What's happened? Like, has somebody crashed? What's happened? And Mum, through wails, let him know that I had MS. And it was probably quite traumatic for him. But he did what my dad always does. He took all 6 foot something of him, stretched up and went, right, let's go inside, have a cup of tea and sort this out. And that's the role models of my family that I have. It's a lot of work having MS, and it's a lot of work to be people of family members with MS, but we keep going.
Yeah, and that's our story. That's our story.
We'll pass back now. Thank you.
What a beautiful, strong, and inspiring family you guys are. Thank you so much for sharing your story so honestly with us. Thank you, Kevin, for being here tonight. Kevin is married to someone who is living with MS. So welcome, Kevin.
Unmute. Now you can hear me. Hi,
Yes.
everybody. I'm Kevin. Kevin Ross, partner of Bronwyn Young, who maybe some of you know. Bronwyn Young, yeah, she kept her maiden name. Keeps me on my toes because it makes it so much easier. You know, doesn't have to change your passport, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm very much on my toes all the time with Bronwyn. But talking about MS, it was interesting. First of all, that vegan diet, I really hope that doesn't catch on. That doesn't thrill me at all. But MS, not so easily diagnosed, I suspect. I've heard that mentioned a couple of times. And, you know, you can have months or even years of being told what you don't have. That was kind of our experience. When we finally had it confirmed for Bronwyn, it was rather surreal for me. Kind of took a few months to really sink in. But it did make sense of, you know, those mystery numbness in her legs, how she was tired often. Sometimes she'd make clumsy little mistakes with things, you know, maybe knock something over. Somebody like me might dismiss that sort of thing as imaginitis, or heaven forbid I mention the word hypochondriac. Of course I wouldn't have done that. So we kind of kept the diagnosis to ourselves during this period because, you know, it was pretty hard to deal with. We weren't telling family or friends, neither of our sons. I think it took quite a lot of courage to tell the others, or tell our sons for starters. Even now, I find it quite difficult. You can probably hear a tremor in my voice just talking about it. But eventually, we kind of realized we had to tell people because, you know, you can't explain to people why you can't join them for that brisk walk up the hill, you know, behind the beach, or why, you know, Bronwyn takes my arm when we're just navigating minor hazards, or why she needs to rest so often. So people had to be told. And this would bring tears to my eyes, and my voice would regularly betray me. Yeah. Eventually, though, it becomes more matter of fact, an easier story to tell, but emotions are not really that easily tamed, are they? I'm an engineer, so, you know, logic is pretty much what I was trained on, but it's very little help when you're dealing with things, emotions, with frustration, with resentment, and with sadness. It's much easier for me to think of solutions. Things like a car that's easier to get in and out of. So we went and bought a car that was easier to get in and out of. I like that. You know, I could get around the place and minimize household trip hazards. Bronwyn will never let me forget about the trip up she had at our front gate due to a brick that wasn't quite flush. So I've put some banisters to the stairs after 25 years of waiting. One thing I did find that helped a lot for me was talking to close friends about it. You know, it just helped me explain. It was a help to talk to close friends, I think. A little bit about us. So Bronwyn and I have been together for about 35 years. And we've sort of, I'd identify 4 major phases in our lives together. There was BC, where that's before children. You know, that's that fun time that when you can do spontaneous things, jump on an airplane, go to Sydney for the weekend, have little adventures, great. Then there's RC, that's raising children. A lot of you all know what that's like, you know. What do you mean? There's no manual? And you start taking one day at a time because that's all you can manage when you're raising children. Then you get into AC, after children. Hey, you get a bit of fun back, a bit of spontaneity back, you know, a little bit of adventure, but you're a bit older now, so the adventures are a little tamer. Then we come into the current phase, which is AD, which is after diagnosis. And guess what, folks? We're back to one day at a time. For the last 35 odd years, we've been side by side, Bronwyn and I. So we're sort of marching towards the aches and pains of senior citizenship together, you know, get up from a chair and you go, you know, and you're both doing it, so it's okay. But it feels like MS is changing Bronwyn at a different rate, and we're being forced out of step with each other now, you know. She's getting more aches and pains than she deserves. There are still times when I lose patience, maybe when I feel a bit resentful, and definitely when I feel sad. I mean, where's that woman gone who could run rings around me on a basketball court? I mean, but most of the time we just get on with the day-to-day. We adapt and we make a few concessions to the condition, and that kind of works. I find it particularly helpful for me personally as a partner to get away on boys' trips. That gives us both a break, I think, and I come back a whole lot more appreciative about just what we do have together. Might sound a bit gloomy, but there are a lot of positives, right? You know, let's think about the positives. I heard somebody mention, you know, the car permit thing for parking and stuff. Well, that's pretty fabulous, isn't it? You get to park right where you need to. But I would like to acknowledge, you know, the support, the wonderful support provided by the society, the Auckland MS Society. I mean, we're both encouraged by the practical help, and I particularly enjoy the social activities on offer. I mean, I like the Christmas party, and I certainly enjoy the comedy night. Typically, Bronwyn's into this head first, right? I don't think I've ever seen her feeling particularly sorry for herself. And she's right in. She's involved in coffee gatherings and support groups. I'm really proud of her for that, and I feel pretty cheap when I get those sort of those feelings of resentfulness or whatever because we can't do whatever it is I want to do. But we're adapting to our situation. I mean, I think me being here and telling this story as the partner is another step on that journey. Overall, you know, I think it's going to be okay. Come on,
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you.